the philosophies and strategies that coaches bring to their teams to bring them to success, often to world championships. We can't quite do that right now in Valorant, but of course, the tensions are heating up between the regions. We saw a big tournament in North America this past weekend, the FaZe Clan Valorant Invitational, and we're already seeing rivalries brew there, particularly between TSM and Sentinels. But going back to the macro view, the world view here, there is some jaw-jacking happening across the pond between NA and EU, and there are some established teams in EU with major orgs coming in with the likes of G2 and Ninjas in Pajamas. We just heard an announcement from Team Liquid. But what does this mean for emerging teams? What does this mean for teams that are on the cusp but don't necessarily have a major organization backing them quite yet, but they are certainly looking for one? That is the crux of the conversation I want to have here. And I'm very proud to bring in Salah, who is the coach of BONK, a team that has had a lot of great success in EU, still searching for that major endorsement from a big organization, but certainly on the path there. Salah joins us from Turkey all the way across the pond, at least from my point of view in New York. Good to see you. How are you? Thanks for joining us.
Thanks. I'm fine. I'm good. Just been working as usual. How are you?
You are a busy man. You just thank you first of all. You just came home from work and you decided to join us live here. So thank you for that. We should give you props for that.
It's all good.
So let's start with you then. You are very busy. You work, you are a law student, you are also the coach of a professional Valorant team. How do you juggle all this?
Not very well. Time management. I guess I'm lucky in the sense that coronavirus, all that kind of changed a lot of the way people spend their days right now. So I'm able to be at home a lot more, and a lot of the things I'm doing, I am able to do all of it at home. So it kind of helps a lot with that. But in general, it's not as hard as you would assume, I'd say. It's definitely a struggle.
So what about the rest of the team? So you have a lot of things on your plate. I know a couple of your players on your team are streamers, former world champions in different titles. But what is the makeup of your team in terms of students or working, etc.? Like, what else is on your players' plates?
So we have some older guys and some younger guys. We have like Saif and Ziz, who I know both go to school. I think Saif is going to college this year, and Ziz is probably still in high school. And the other three, Aaron, Bonka, and Yasin, I know that like Yasin and Bonka, for example, they've been in esports or been around gaming kind of for a while. Bonka, of course, being that two-time world champion that you mentioned, and Yasin being the streamer. I think Aaron, yeah, I mean, everyone's kind of really committed to this. I don't really think they're doing anything else right now, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I'm not questioning whether the players are committed to becoming pro Valorant players. I was just curious about what else they had on their plates. Because when you look at major orgs, of course, you just assume that players like Tens and Wardell, Sabrosa, etc., this is it. That's their job, right? They're signed to a major org. They're being paid by the organization, and their primary focus is grinding Valorant, right? But with you as an example, that isn't there yet. There isn't a major org that has signed your team yet, and so you still have a lot of things, a job, a college, etc., that you're focusing on.
Yeah. The thing is, I think that's the case for pretty much 90% of esports and competitive gaming in general. I think unless you are someone who, for example, is getting paid a lot of money to do this as a profession, you know, to commit all of your time as you would with a job, it's kind of hard to not do that, right? Like, I'd say, for example, that even if I carried on with an organization, I'd probably still go with university. I forgot the question. Sorry. Can you ask it again?
Well, let me ask it this way. Like, just we talked about what you have on your plate, but let's ask about like getting to that pinnacle, or just getting that attention from different orgs, right? So BONK had a great showing in the mandatory cup, right? And they you're continue rolling, not such a great result this past weekend, but still overall very high on people's rankings, particularly in EU, right? So what has happened since then? Like, have you gotten the attention that the team deserves from major organizations? Like, what has this last week been like?
I think it hasn't been too different for us. It hasn't been like suddenly now we're world stars and everyone is talking. I think we've definitely got more attention from the fans. I'd say everyone in this, like, inside the scene, the teams, the analyst casters and whatnot, they all kind of did know us and knew that we were a top team. But I think now the outside, so when 20k people see you in a Twitch final against G2, now people are saying, okay, Bonk, they're adding, the way they used to add Fabrican into the equation, like, why isn't Fabrican invited to them? They're doing it with us now, which is great. I mean, we definitely have, I guess, gone into the public eye a little bit more, I'd say.
So how stable does Bonk feel in terms of the EU Valorant landscape, in terms of feeling like you deserve a spot at the table at all major tournaments moving forward, or at least invitations?
I mean, I think we know, and I think a lot of people believe and know that we're a top 5 team. I mean, I think it goes without saying from what we did in mandatory, and I think we're there as a team. I think a lot of teams are still at the start of their journey. I think in 2 years we're going to see everything's going to be changed. But right now, when that discussion comes up of 6, let's say there's 6 invited teams, we should be there. If there's 5 invited teams, we should be there. We should definitely always be considered as, should we invite these guys? Yes, is pretty much what I'd say.
I asked Yassine, I had a chance to interview Yassine, and I found him to be a very charismatic guy. Of course, he's a streamer, so it's in his blood, right? But and that interview, by the way, is on our YouTube channel /ESPN Esports. And I've always heard this, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I've always heard this philosophy among many top orgs that it's not just a successful team that they're looking for. They're also looking for that one marketable piece. Maybe it's an influencer, maybe it's a heavily followed player, whatever it may be. It not only needs to be a team that plays well, but also that one star piece to be able to market. Have you found that as well in your conversations with orgs?
I think just in the small conversations I've had personally, I think it's definitely been, the orgs are much more interested in the more marketable people, as you said. It seems to be, especially with the way NA took things and the way NA did things, is that they value how much views someone can get rather than how many kills they can get or how good they are in the server. So yeah, I'd say it's a big thing right now. How much I like it, I don't know, but I'd say it's definitely a big thing, like the marketability side of everything.
How much of those conversations are you having versus, I know that like a lot of the players, if not all of them, are signed to Evolve Talent, right? So that's a talent agency that's sort of representing the players, I presume, to find a major org. They represent a lot of talent in esports and competitive gaming, but how much of those conversations are they having? How much of those conversations are you privy to? Do you take part in those conversations?
I don't think I or the team haven't really been taking part in a lot of the conversations, just because the whole reason we have the agency and the whole reason we went, we kind of agreed to something like that was that so we could focus on playing. We didn't have to focus about, talking with every single org and, talking with everybody who was interested in all that stuff. I think that was the main goal of having an agency, and of course they know how to do it better than we do. That's kind of their job. So yeah, I mean, we haven't really been engaging in all of the conversations like that. I think we've been leaving it to them until there is a point where we do have to get involved, and I think that's further down the line, further into the talks with a certain team.
So that is interesting, though. I that's a great approach, right? And it's positioning the team to have the most possible success, especially with an agency like Evolve Talent that has these connections already, because they deal with these major organizations with some of their other roster members. So how did that relationship come about?
I was actually a longtime friend of one of our agent company, and he works there. When I started out in BONK, I kind of, I remember talking to him about a couple of things. I know he was very good at organizations. I didn't actually know he was involved at the time. I just said, hey, want to talk about a few things? And he said, yeah, I'm in Evolve. You guys can come over. He really wanted us to come over, and I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good blueprint. I'm very curious to see the next couple months for BONK. Like the thing is like with Fabrican and Party Parrots, I'll just use them as an example. They didn't necessarily have the level of agency behind them as you guys have. And now we're hearing, well, it took a merger between these two teams and essentially the best pieces, or whatever you want to call it, in order to get the attention of a major org like Fun Plus Phoenix, right? So I get.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, when you see that, when you see what transpired there between those two teams, that many people thought they will probably get signed by two different orgs, and look at the way that it happens, how concerning is that?
I think when we saw it, we were kind of surprised. We're like, oh wow, especially with Party Parrots. I think they were even at everyone considered them to be the best team in Europe at that time. They were slightly dropping off, but yeah, we still thought they were one of the best, so we were definitely surprised. But I don't think we really looked at it and said, wow, it's going to happen to us, or we're afraid now, or what's the point, or anything like that. I think there are asterisks behind what happened there when you compare it to us. I think while their rosters were very good, we crafted our roster in such a way that we don't have a player that you can switch out and say, let's bring this guy instead. All of our players are the best they're doing the team. So, an org, of course, could come along and say, we want to do that, but it wouldn't make sense to us or anyone else, I think. I think our team is already that team that people are trying to create,
So take me through building the team. How much did you have in terms of involvement in crafting the team? What were some of the philosophies in bringing these particular 5 players together?
So it basically started with BONK and Yasin. They were exiting NIP. They wanted to go, basically,
Were they stand-ins there? Or how serious did those discussions get with them and Ninjas in Pajamas?
With BONK, he was actually signed to NIP. And I know Yasin was a stand-in. Supposedly he was going to be signed, or I'm not really too familiar with what happened there, but I know BONK was he was a signed player under them. He was with the Paladins roster that got signed at the very start of Valorant. But when we were crafting the team, it was basically just a question of, I think it was more of the players to a certain degree, where they said, we really feel, we tried out a lot of people, for example, and we feel like these players are the best. Not because of the character they're playing, and not because of a certain thing, it was because they fit the role we need the best in the team. And of course, there was oversight from me, I saw a lot of it, and I understood where they were coming from. It was a lot of that. It was a lot of, when you have someone like Bonka who's been in esports for years, and you have someone like Yasin and these people who have been at the top of different games, it's very easy to know what we want and know how we want to go with things. I think everyone's had their failures in past games, and they know, you learn from your mistakes, and that's kind of what this team is. It's the perfect team, in our opinion.
So you've had some great results. Like we were talking about the Mandatory Cup. You made it all the way to the final. You faced G2, and I remember I talked with Yasin afterwards, like I said, and he was very modest. He was very humble in talking about the series, saying, look, I don't think I fully figured out Ascent yet and strategies on that map, for example. And I don't know whether I know I need to scrim a lot more on Jet. There's so much more to learn on that agent, for example. So what were your takeaways, particularly from that grand final against G2 at the Mandatory Cup?
I think the thing about G2 is we thought we were going to beat them. It wasn't that, hey guys, if we play really well and we do this and we have this, hero moment, we're going to win. It was more that we should beat them, Realistically, we should beat them. That's the way we thought. And, the strategy and the game plan we had going into it, we thought that was better than theirs. However, we weren't really able to play a lot of what we were supposed to play. We weren't able to get our thing going. And I think it's a big, the way I see the game is it's kind of like a chess game, as in when one person is in control of the game, the other person is playing on the back foot. And when you're playing on the back foot, it's a lot harder to play the game, in my opinion. And you basically have to play this reactionary type game. That's what G2 are very good at. They make you play a reactionary style of gameplay. And that was basically our downfall.
What were the big takeaways? Take me through the next. I know you guys had a qualification this weekend as well, but take me through the next few days. What were some of the things that you worked on? What were scrims like?
I think the takeaways were our takeaways in general. From every tournament, right now the Valorant esports scene is so young, in the way that this isn't even 10% or even 5% of what you're going to see from teams in 3 years, I'd say. This is nothing. And that's the way we see it. We've still got so much to learn as a team, and so we have to evolve so much that it's kind of hard to say it's this one thing, it's this one takeaway that is, if we fix this, we're going to beat G2 next time. it's more of a, we need to carry on evolving, carry on getting better as a team, having more synergy, having more, being more calm in certain situations, kind of not letting them take control of the game. Those were our main takeaways, I don't really think we went into scrims the next day and said, okay, this is what we need to do, this is what we need to do. I think it was mainly more just, we need to carry on getting better.
How, from a experience standpoint, you have a lot of young players on this team, right? And maybe this is the biggest tournament, or at least a final, like biggest stress-inducing moment that they would have experienced, playing in a major tournament final against who most people believe to be the best team in Europe, some might say the world, right? So you're in this situation. It doesn't go your way necessarily. In some parts of the series, it's very competitive, however, and now your team has that experience. So how much more confident would you say those players are now that they've had those reps at that level on that stage?
Yeah, I think they probably did evolve a lot as players that day. Everyone apart from BONK in this team is still at the start of their esports career, realistically. Zydish, or Aaron, as he's now called, was around the tier 2 CSGO scene for a long time. Never, he was never really at the 10, though. He's never at the top 5, maybe even top 2, where we were in mandatory, being basically the second best team in Europe at the time, as everyone said we were. So I think everyone apart from BONK really has that, they need to play more finals, they need to get that experience. And I think everyone, for each final we play, we're just going to carry on getting stronger. I think that's just the way it is, right? So I'd say they probably doubled that day from just experience and, okay, now that's how I deal with this in this situation. Okay, and that wasn't so, it's not as scary as it seems, or well, I don't need to be nervous maybe, that kind of thing.
I know that the qualifiers for the Allied Esports Odyssey were going on this weekend. Did you have a chance to watch any of the FaZe Invitational Tournament?
I think I watched some of the final. I watched the first 3 games of the final, I'd say. Yeah, I watched the first 3 games, yeah.
So I'll just ask this more generally even. What do you make of the style of play, compositions, approach to different maps on attack and defend for NA versus EU? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
It's a hard one to answer, honestly, because from when I'm looking at it as an EU coach and someone who is inside, heavily inside the EU scene, when I look at NA Valorant, it does kind of look very, it doesn't look as good in comparison in my opinion. It's straight, like, when I'm watching their games, I see a lot more mistakes. I see a lot more weird things they're doing that don't make sense. I see a lot more, comfort rather than trying to be the best. They're just playing for comfort, basically, a lot of these things. And however, there is always going to be a bit of that bias, and there is always going to be a bit of that, rivalry where it's maybe they have the right way and they look at us the same way. Maybe they're watching our game saying, wow, these guys are really bad, the same way we're doing it to them, But if I were to be objective and say, the difference, I'd say NA is lacking right now compared to EU, I'd say.
And I hear that a lot from anyone I talk to in EU, which is fascinating because the flip side to that is that the NA scene is so much more established than the EU scene. And people might go so far as to say there's more established stars in the NA scene as opposed to EU. Why do you think that is? Why is EU taking its time to establish the Valorant scene much more than NA is?
I'd say from the organization point of view, all that I've heard is basically that NAOs generally do have more money. Do have much more money. There's more sponsorship money, stuff like that. Apparently, that is one of the main reasons as to why they have more orgs and more structure like that. What the second part of the question again? Sorry.
No, that's it. Just why why EU is lower to the table than NA in Valorant.
So, from a competitive standpoint, from a play, the way we play standpoint, we're not behind at all. From a structure standpoint, we are, and it looks like we're behind that. And I think it's a very deceiving. It's kind of deceiving when you look at it, just to think, oh wow, NA have Envious, TSM, FaZe, all these organizations, they're better. But again, it is kind of like a fugazi, I think. Like, it doesn't mean anything. It's kind of like if you brought the top 10 teams from EU and put them up against the top 10 teams from NA, we beat them every single time. It's just they have much more, they have Wardell, who streams 8 hours a day. I always see the guy streaming, and then he uploads a YouTube video every day about how he's like some mad fragger. And in our team, for example, we don't have time to do that. We're not going to do that from a purely competitive standpoint. Why would we ever do that? That's the way we look at it.
Why not though? I mean, that to me, that sounds like brand building. That sounds like a way to improve the scene. Why wouldn't you and your teammates or your players consider that?
Well, I think it's like, it's kind of it's a 50-50. So basically, the way I see it, at least 50-50, I see, on one hand, I think it's very good to do stuff like that because of course, brand building, you're going to get more money straight up. You're going to be worth a lot more as a player if you do that stuff. You're going to be worth a lot more as a team if you. On the other hand, I also wouldn't like to, for example, streaming tournaments. I know that's a big thing, right? G2 do it sometimes. It's only G2 really at the upper echelons. I know, do they do it in America? I think they do, right? They do a lot of player stream stuff like that. Tens will stream, and the reason we'd never do that, for example, is because then we'd be leaking our own things. And because of how competitive our scene is, we can't leak our own things. Because we're going to be playing Fun Plus Phoenix, or the supposed Fun Plus Phoenix team is a good example of that. They have a great coach, and that coach, if I'm giving that coach what he needs, then I'm helping him beat my team, and I don't want that. That's kind of the way we see it as well. And it's also, we're scrimming, we're pracking, we're VOD reviewing, we're doing all these things 8 hours, 9 hours a day, and then on top of that to stream would be very straining just in general. And do all that content. They have Cloud9 behind, so they can do stuff like that because they have editors, they have people who are going to do all that stuff for them. They have social media managers, all of that. We don't have that. We don't have an editor or a montage maker or anything like that. So it's kind of, if we were to do that, we'd be working for 15 hours a day instead of 9 or 8. That's the way we do it right now. Yeah.
That really makes me think about scrims then, because that's another area where people are very careful about trying to divulge tactics and secrets, especially if they have a smoking gun or some sort of play that hasn't been seen before that they've been labbing, right? So how do you approach scrims if you are very concerned about giving up too much information to your opponents?
I mean, I think generally it's the way it worked in CSGO, or still works in CSGO, and the way it works here is you're not exclusively scrimming the top 10 or top 5 teams. I think you're scrimming, we scrim probably, I'd say 2 teams or 3 teams regularly, and then each week we're getting a different teams in. And I think we kind of, if we want to practice something in particular that we think is really good, we'll probably bring that out against someone we know we're really going to face in the tournament. In the finals, mandatory say we shouldn't scrim a certain top team. If we're going to be in the finals against them, we'll be in the semis against them. If we group with one of the teams, we know we're not going to scrim them for a whole week. Like if we were to have qualified for Allied, we probably wouldn't have scrimmed any of the teams there for the whole week. Even though it's only 1 best of 2 every day. So yeah, I think it's just, there's so many teams that you can scrim, and there's so many good teams. In fact, like it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. You can scrim any team, and at the end of the day, if you're mixing up the teams enough, it's not really going to get noticed. So
take me through the Allied qualifiers, losing to BBL in the final there in qualifier number 2. What happened?
First of all, CNED is
Turkish team too. How dare they?
Yeah.
How could they?
They did me dirty. CNED is god. CNED is really, really, really good. First of all, I kind of see him as one of the best AWPers in the EU. I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday, and I said, if you took CNED, basically their AWPer, he's a jet AWPer like Wardell, and you put him up against Wardell, he'd beat Wardell 20 out of 20, 20 times out of 20. He would, I think he would demolish Wardell, for example. He's very good. That's one. And a jet player like that who's extremely talented is hard to deal with anyway. And then on top of that, you've been playing for, again, we don't like to make excuses, but it is also a factor when we played the whole day. So we played 7 games, 8 games, 6 games maybe, at least 6 played for the whole day. That's a lot. and then you add a best of three on top of that, and at the end of the day, things like this can happen. I mean, we were really disappointed on ourselves, and there's stuff we need to work on, and we know there's stuff we need to work on. And I think it was just a whole medley of those things, having an ignition week, having an ignition tournament every week. I mean, just last week we came off mandatory. This week we highlighted, and then next week we would have had another ignition, and the next week and the next week after that, It's a cluster of reasons, I say. And I'd say about 70-80% of it is us. The way I see it is the only person we're trying to win against is ourselves. We have to be the best version of ourselves, and we have to be the best we can be. Everything after that is kind of a plus. Everything after that is kind of like an add-on. If they have a very good game, and if everything, and sure, we played the best we could play. We didn't play the best we could play, and we made a lot of mistakes. And we didn't do a lot of the things we had to do. That's just generally how it goes. If you lose, you lose, and it's because of yourself. That's the way we see it.
Is this loss a big one for you, or is this just a speed bump on the road?
I'd call it a speed bump on the road. I think anybody with who can rub two brain cells together would know that this isn't the end of the world, and this doesn't mean necessarily that we're a bad team. It just means 2 qualifying spots, and there's 8 of the best teams in Europe who have to qualify, or 6 or whatever, 5 of some of the best teams in Europe have to qualify. There's always going to be a team that doesn't make it, and last time it wasn't us. Mandatory, it wasn't us. This time it was us, and it's just the way it is. I think, that kind of qualifier is always going to have something. So, yeah, we just look for the next one. We just look to get better, and we go again.
Let me ask quickly about Jet. Like, Yassine plays Jet on BONK, of course. We have Wardell Tens playing Jet. And Jet seems to be a very artistic agent, right? And you mentioned CNED there as well. What is it about Jet that the best, either mechanically gifted players or just truly talented players in Valorant gravitate to Jet?
I think she's the flair pick. I kind of think that's a very good way of describing her, because she pairs up so well with the AWP as well. Apart from Yasin, all the people we've mentioned, there are AWPers, Wardell, Tens. I'm not sure if Tens is an AWPer actually, but I know, CNED, Wardell, all of the EU Jet players, they're all AWPers apart from Yasin. And I think because she is if you add the AWP, which is overpowered, kind of very, very strong weapon, and then Jet, who is exceptionally good with the AWP, then it's just this dream combo where you can drop 40 every game, you look flashing, you look great. It's a lot of that. I don't think it's necessarily that Jet is above and beyond every character. I just think it's more of that flashy kind of character, I'd say.
Salah, you've been very gracious with your time here on Coach's Corner. I really appreciate you being here. Let's end on this. Let me go back to the idea of this team with some great results. They've proven that they can compete in the EU scene, and they're still hunting for that major org presence, right? And we have precedent set with the likes of Party Parrots and Fabrican, where they give up at some point and say, look, no orgs are talking to us. We have success, but we can't sustain this forever. So we either have to merge or disband and look elsewhere because we have to live. So for BONK, maybe we have not reached that point yet, but how long are these players in it, and yourself as well? Is this something that is a long-term plan? What is where are we going with BONK in terms of trying to find a major org presence in Valorant, and how long will it take, and how long are you willing to see it through?
I mean, we think that we're going to get an org. It's going to happen eventually. Everything will happen. Everything that has to happen will happen eventually. I can't speak to how long we'd have to go orgless for it's a very big hypothetical to, I'm really able to answer. I don't know how long it would have to go without us getting an org for us to split up or anything like that. But I think the way everything is going, we're trying to be here for the long run. We're trying to be here in 3, 4, 5 years. And, if we don't get an org for 2 months, it doesn't matter. We're still going to.
It's good to hear that. It's good to hear that, the grind is real, and there's some long-term goals here for BONK who've enjoyed some success in the EU scene. And I especially cannot wait for when the world, we are able to safely have LAN events again, because I think EU versus NA is going to be some of the best esports we see, not just Valorant, but overall. because we're already seeing some great competition in Valorant. Salah is the coach of BONK. What's next? I know that didn't work out in Ally, but what's next for the team? What's the next tournament you guys are grinding for?
Right now, I don't think the next Ignition has been announced. I don't know if we're going to have another one this month. We should do. Realistically, the way they've been planning them and laying them out, we should have another Ignition event. But for the foreseeable future, for the next 2 weeks, it's just going to be grinding, scrimming, practicing, making sure we get better.
So as the head coach of BONK, joining us here on ESPN Esports. This was fun. We're going to have you back at some point. We just scratched the surface here. There's a lot to talk about, like little intricacies and nuances. Maybe we'll do that after a couple tournaments, particularly when there's some surprise plays you pull on us. We can break them down on the show or something. Thanks for joining us, man.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
And for all of you watching, thank you for joining us as well. We might have a little bit of a programming change as it pertains to when this show airs. We will be weekly. Don't worry about that. Just as usual, we might have a different day to announce on social media, so please feel free to follow us at ESPN_esports. For you Rocket League fans out there, our brand new Rocket League show is coming up in just about an hour's time at 2:30 p.m. Eastern. And of course, we have a full slate of live shows all week long. You can get more on the schedule and what comes up at ESPN.com/esports. Thanks for joining us here on Coach's Corner. We'll catch you next week.